The Oak Ridge Reservation holds an important place in our nation's history, and it continues to play a vital role in national defense and modern scientific and computational research. But decades of work on the reservation dating back to World War II have left some parts of the reservation contaminated with radioactive or other hazardous waste. It's the job of the U.S. Department of Energy to clean up those residual hazards. DOE relies on citizen input on those cleanup operations. The Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board is the primary source of advice and recommendations to DOE on its environmental management program. The board offers advice on a wide range of activities, from safe, secure disposal of radioactive waste to long-term stewardship of areas with waste left in place. Be part of this important work by attending the monthly meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. Call us for more information or visit our website.
Time on the clock is 6 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you to the June 11th meeting of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. Our next meeting will be July 9th. It'll be a new member training. It'll be held here at 6 o'clock. Moving on, item 2 on the agenda. Comments from our regulators and the Deputy Designated Federal Officer, Ms. Kange.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody made it in without getting too wet. Just a couple of things I wanted to share. First, for those of you that might not have heard, Mark Whitney, the former manager here for the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management, has gone back to Washington, D.C. He is in the number 2 position for the Office of Environmental Management up in Washington. And that I believe is a great thing both for Mark as well as for Oak Ridge, because we of course had the benefit of his wisdom and his leadership, and he now knows and understands the Oak Ridge cleanup program well and understands the challenges that we face. So I think that is ultimately going to be a very good thing for Oak Ridge. And so I am acting as the manager, and I've been told that they will be filling that position permanently, hopefully without too much of a delay. So we'll see what happens. So that's the first thing. On the project side, some very exciting news. I've been talking for several years now, it seems, about the progress of the decontamination and demolition of the K-25 project. That's actually something that the department has been working on for the past 6 years. Demolition began in 2008, and we are planning to claim completion of that project by the beginning of July. So we are very close to claiming success and completion of that project. There are a number of walk-downs that are scheduled over the next several weeks that we will, of course, participate in with our contractor to make sure that all of the project requirements have been met. But that is also very exciting news and a huge accomplishment for the Oak Ridge Cleanup Program. The third thing I wanted to mention is there is going to be a community workshop, which we have invited David to and want to encourage all members of the SSAB to participate in. The workshop will be held on Tuesday, June 24th. It will be at the Riverside Grill, located just down the road here. They have a back meeting room that's separate from their restaurant. It is open to the public. And the purpose, of course, is to engage with the community and to identify a few key issues that we can work on together with the community to help to move forward with. There will be 3 breakout sessions. One of the sessions will focus on short and long-term priorities and how we are able to accomplish those with the available funding that we have or with our budget. The second one will focus on contracting strategies for several large projects that we are in the planning stages for. And this is an opportunity to engage many of our small businesses and other contractors in the area to get their ideas on contracting strategies. And then the third session, which will actually be chaired by Dave, is a look, once DOE is done with cleanup, what's next on the horizon for the community, and it will focus on reindustrialization and historic preservation and some of the other things that our program is working on to plan and prepare for when we are done with cleanup. So again, it's Tuesday, June 24th at the Riverside Grill. It starts at 1:30 and is slated to be done at 5:30. Open to the public, and many of the local community organizations have been asked to participate. In addition to the Site-Specific Advisory Board, we certainly expect to see a good crowd there. So if you are available, please plan to join us. And with that, I have one other thing I wanted to do, and I presume this is as good a time as any, right?
It is.
And so I'm going to actually move up to the front because we want to honor one of our board members who is going to be leaving us. Has indicated that he is going to have to move on and participate, we hope, as a member of the public.
Yes.
But not as a board member. So I just, Scott, if you'll come up here, I just want to thank you for your service, to acknowledge your contribution. Scott has done many things in the 3 years he's been here. Most recently, you've chaired the Public Outreach Committee and devoted a tremendous amount of time to advance that mission or aspect of the board. You've also, I understand, served on the Stewardship Committee and the Executive Committee. So we have a plaque for you. You can hang it in some appropriate area in your new office, right? And we certainly want to thank you for your service, for your dedication. We certainly have benefited from it, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Scott, I want to thank you as, having worked with you for 3 years, more, getting on to 4 years, really. It's just been an absolute pleasure, and we're really going to miss you. So, but thank you for everything you've done to the board, contributions and your energy and your good spirits.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Mr. Adler.
A couple of scheduling things. Let's see, in July, there will be no full board meeting because instead of the full board meeting, we're going to have a meeting where I will provide training to the new board members. Anybody can come and chime in and offer any thoughts they have, but mark your schedules that there won't be a meeting then. As you're aware, in August, we will have our annual planning retreat, and that will take place during the day on a Saturday, so there will not be a nighttime meeting in August. In September, we have, it appears that the chairs meeting, which is taking place in Idaho this fall, will be occurring during the same time frame that we have our normal board meeting. So we'll have to make a decision. I propose we discuss it at the executive committee coming up on whether to defer or simply skip the September meeting. So people should mark their calendars. My guess is we may end up just not having the September meeting, but we'll decide that later on. So, and that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Adler. Ms. Jones is not making it. We have a new representative from TDEC. The familiar chair and face of John Owsley down in the corner has been replaced. Christoph, if you'd introduce yourself to us and then any comments you may have or any information we need to know.
Thank you. My name is Krzysztof Czartoryski. To all of you, I would like to say something about my background. I'm 23 years veteran of the state employment. I have some experience working in a permitting program and about 21 years working at the oversight office.
Excuse me,
Yes, please.
I'm a little hard of hearing. Would you use a mic?
Yeah, thank you. I have 23 years of the state employment, 2 years in a permitting program, 21 years in a DOE oversight office. Currently, I serve as a FFA program manager, and I continue to serve as a site treatment plan for mixed waste on Oak Ridge Reservation. Our office continues to implement reorganization. So we have a little bit, more bureaucratic work. Right now, the positions have to be changed. We're coming with the new names for positions. We're implementing these changes, under the civil service rules. So if you have any questions, please contact me or contact John Owsley, who remains to be head of our office. I've got one announcement here that John Owsley asked me to make. There is an upcoming watershed meeting for the Emory River and Watts Bar Reservoir. This meeting is going to be organized by the Tennessee Department of Water Resources. DOE was already invited to this event. Public is also invited to participate. There is more information to be found on facebook.com under TDEC Watershed Management link. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. Public comment period. Mr. Torrey?
The public comment period is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Seeing none. As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community as a large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website.
Thank you very much. Very well done. Okay, next on the agenda is our presentation. Mr. Hicks, would you please introduce our presenter?
Sure. Tonight we've got Steve Cook with us. He's going to continue the discussion that we had a little bit ago about the east end of town, what's happening there. In fact, Steve works for the DOE Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. I understand that he's somewhere in the line of communication with Dave Adler up there. He works in support of the East Tennessee Technology Park Reindustrialization Program. He joined the Oak Ridge office back in 2007. He worked with the National Energy Technology Laboratory, where he managed technology development projects and held program leadership roles in support of the Office of Environmental Management. He's well qualified with BS and MS degrees in mechanical engineering, and he's a certified project manager professional. Makes me wonder what a certified manager non-professional might be. He's also a certified safety and emergency manager. He's a registered environmental manager. With those qualifications, we certainly look forward to hearing what he has to say about what's happening out east. Steve.
Yes.
Where are you?
Right here. Thank you. I see you didn't get the shorter version of that bio.
Oh, I did.
But you did, but you decided to go with the longer version, okay.
I read the shorter version. And after I took out the swear words, there was nothing left.
Okay. Well, yes, I work with the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management and the Project Management Division, supporting the reindustrialization program with Dave Adler being the lead for that program. And so I'm delighted to be here. And what I want to talk to you about is the status of property and infrastructure transfers at the ETTP site, which is on the far western end of the Oak Ridge Reservation, right over there. If I can. There, of course, You guys are familiar with this site. The vision for the site is incorporates more than just in private industrial development. Conservation is also part of the vision for the site. Some of you may or may not be aware, but the Department of Energy has set aside 3,000 acres surrounding the site to the north for conservation as part of the Black Oak Ridge Conservation Easement. And there's other areas that, while they've not been set aside yet, they're areas that are potentially will be used for conservation. There's some of the site that's set aside for historic preservation, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And there are some pieces of the site, burial ground right here, the 1070 burial ground, and some area down here that the Office of Secure Transportation has that will be retained for the indefinite future for mission needs. This map shows kind of where we're at, and I think the thing that I hope stands through on this map is that the private industry footprint has really increased over the past few years at the site. The blue areas have been transferred from DOE to CROAT, and in turn, in many cases, sold for private industrial development. The green areas are the areas that are leased to CROAT, and in most cases subleased to private industry. And then we have the areas that are gray, that where we have currently are developing the documentation and are starting the regulator review process to transfer these areas. So you can see that a significant portion of the site has been transferred and more is on the way. If you look at from a standpoint of the infrastructure, kind of consistent with the land that has been transferred, which is this area currently, and some other areas that are not shown in this map, about 1.3 miles of roadways have been transferred to the city of Oak Ridge. And below the surface, the sewer lines have been transferred to the city of Oak Ridge. The water distribution system is in the process of being transferred to the city of Oak Ridge, and that will be complete this year. And the power distribution system is in the process of being transferred to the city of Oak Ridge. So there's a lot going on both at the surface and below the surface at this site to transform it into an industrial park. Right up there, just highlighted, is the two most recent transfers, parcels ED11 and ED12. They were transferred to CROAT in May. That's about 28 acres total right up there. And that kind of fills out with all this area that's already been transferred and some area right up here that's been transferred previously. This is a close-up of that 28-acre site that was transferred in May of this year. Flat land, vacant land. There is some temporary buildings that will eventually be removed, but basically it's flat, vacant land ready for development. Many of you are probably aware that there was a proposal received by the Department of Energy last year for an airport, a general aviation airport. This is the footprint proposed for transfer, shown in yellow. It's about 171 acres in total. And we have started doing some of the environmental work for that transfer. Also, the airport authority will require some land that has previously been transferred. Some things about the proposal. It came again from the Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority. They identified some need for mid-size aircraft to kind of as a reliever airport for the traffic that they have at McGee-Tyson, which they want to reserve more for the larger airplanes. They completed 2 planning studies, and the site that ended up rising to the top is the one I just showed you. They looked at multiple sites on the reservation, and they submitted a request last June, and they have this schedule. It's kind of a notional schedule, but they have a schedule calling for start of construction in 2017 with operations by 2021. I show this slide. It's kind of busy, and I don't want you to try to read any of this per se, but just to set up the next couple slides, there's a lot that has to be done to transfer property. It's a tedious process of documentation and regulator review, and it takes quite some time. This phase here can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on what data you already have available, environmental data, where you stand with your documentation. Then you go through this process with the regulators here that can take 6 to 12 months, where they have to review our transfer packages. And then you go to the headquarters review phase, and then from that to the congressional, there's a 60-day congressional review. So the whole process is quite lengthy. We have been proactively looking for ways to work that process in a way that is more responsive to the needs of the community. And so as part of that, we want to try to get more ahead of the game on this analysis phase and this regulator review phase here, to kind of proactively work in anticipation of receiving proposals for transfer, so that when we get those proposals, we're already down the pike a ways. And so here is a view looking to the southeast, and the facility here, some of you recognize as the K33 facility, which has recently been demolished. This is what that site looks like now. It's over 100 acres, and we're preparing the documentation and getting ready to go through the environmental review process with the regulators for this, in anticipation of this being a really wonderful site for development. Likewise, this is a 1945 vintage photograph of the powerhouse area. And I don't know much about this. I read this from our historical information that we collect as part of our environmental documentation, but this was a 270 megawatt power plant that operated from the early 1940s to the early 1960s, before the Tennessee Valley Authority supplied 100% of the power to the site. And so this site now looks like this, and is ready for a redevelopment. And so, and most of this site, by the way, is currently leased to Croat, and a portion right here is subleased to Oak Ridge Forest Products for a wood chipping operation that they have, where they supply wood chips to the steam plant at ORNL. So we're looking to get ahead of the regulator review process to transfer this site, over 400 acres. Here's an aerial of that site. You can see a little bit more clearly. For those of you who are familiar, this is the K1007 P1 pond that you can see from Highway 58 if you drive out that way. And so this parcel that we're looking at includes most of what we call the former powerhouse area, and also some of this area around P1 pond. This area up here has already been transferred. That area over there has already been transferred. By going through the review process, putting together the documentation for these large parcels, we are able to work more efficiently, and we're able to work more proactively, getting ahead of these proposals. So here's kind of a summary of where we're at. To date, we've transferred 230 acres at the Heritage Center. This doesn't include the land that was transferred at the Horizon Center. We've transferred 230 acres and 13 buildings, and we've started the review process for 875 additional acres. We've completed transfer of the railroad. The railroad is now, it's been upgraded and sold. Energy Solutions now operates the railroad at the site. The water and sewer system, the transfer of that will be complete by the end of this year. Electric distribution system transfer is underway. The road transfers are underway, 1.3 miles transferred to date. Fire protection and emergency response services have been transferred to the city of Oak Ridge. We transferred the fire department, the fire station, to the city back in 2008. And safety oversight is being transitioned over time to TOSHA, OSHA, as these parcels are transferred. And the other thing that we're doing to facilitate reindustrialization is that we're expanding the public access area. We're contracting the security, the secured portion of the K25 site. So that's all I have, and with that, I can entertain any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Very, very good. Are there any questions of the board members? Mr. Bell?
When Croat,
Please use your microphone. Thank you.
when Croat sells property, where does the money go?
You know, they're, as a not-for-profit organization, they are committed to reinvesting the money into the redevelopment of the site. So if you go out there to the site, you'll see a lot of improvements that have been made in terms of landscaping, signage, renovation of buildings and stuff like that. So they're committed to plowing that money back into the site.
And what about, you mentioned somebody with a chipping factory leasing from Croat.
Mhm.
I don't remember anybody talking about leasing from Croat, just property transfer. So Croat still owns that and just leases it out at a rate, or?
Yeah, actually, that property is leased from Croat. We lease that property to Croat, and they in turn sublease it to the Oak Ridge Forest Products.
Mentioning, if I can just add in, that initially, when the reindustrialization program was first established back in the 1996 timeframe, it was predominantly a leasing program where all properties were leased from DOE to the community reuse organization, and then they subleased it to private companies. Around the 2003 timeframe, when some regulations became available and there were other factors that contributed to this switch, the program transitioned from predominantly a leasing program to a title transfer program. But there always has been, and there continues to be, properties that are leased and then subleased, sometimes before they are transferred, or sometimes because there's not a desire to take over ownership of that property in perpetuity. So there is the use of both mechanisms in use today.
Sure.
Good, Dr. Bell. Dr. Bell.
What about, taxes on that property? Is anybody paying taxes on it?
Yes, my understanding is that property that has been transferred, the city of Oak Ridge does collect taxes on it, as well as Roane County.
Roane County. Dr. Hatcher.
Could you give us a few more details about the airport and the intended use of the airport and different kinds of aircraft? Is there to be any commercial use, or is this all to be private aircraft?
You know, if you don't mind, Dave, let me defer to you on that because you've been more involved in that.
It's being referred to as what a general services airport. It would be an airport with I can't remember if it was a 5,000 or 6,000 foot runway. It would not be for United Air to fly commercial passenger flights into. It would be an airport suitable for very small jets and airplanes. It would be used both by private pilots who just need a safe, proximate place to fly their planes out of, but also potentially to service or augment the industrial park. Increasingly, when companies make decisions to site big, expensive factories with large capital investments, they're very interested in having a proximate airport, because if the production facility goes down for want of a part, they want to be able to get that part back to themselves very quickly. So it would not be one where 727s landed. It would be one where small jets and other prop craft could land. Just add one more, and apparently there is a need for this type of an airport. They're constantly looking 20 years into the future to see whether or not existing available airstrips service the need, and the expectation is that as we move into the future, Island Home and McGee Tyson, which are the two primary real airports in the area, will not be sufficient. So, yeah.
Would it be an Oak Ridge Airport owned by the city or owned by?
It'd be owned by the Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority, just like McGee Tyson.
Are there any other questions from the board? Did anyone in the audience have a question of Mr. Cook? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Very-
you.
Very well done. Okay.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to have me here today to share with you the latest developments in our planning activities for ensuring circular disposal capacity for the DOE cleanup here in Oak Ridge. Move over here so everybody can you all see the slides from there? Before I start providing a status update, I wanted to give a little bit of background for those of you that are new to the board or that would like a refresher. Basically, the on-site circular disposal facility, also known as the Environmental Management Waste Disposal Facility, or EMWMF, was the selected remedy over 10 years ago for disposal of waste from cleanup of Oak Ridge Reservation site facilities of DOE. And it has provided safe, compliant, and cost-effective disposal of those remediation waste. And it primarily receives building demolition debris and soils from the sites that are being cleaned up. And the higher contamination waste, such as process equipment, is typically disposed of at off-site disposal facilities, either permitted disposal facilities or DOE disposal facilities that are located in the western states. This is a picture of the EMWMF, and it basically consists of 6 disposal cells. 5 of those cells are either active or have been filled. There are other water management features that include a leachate collection system and leachate storage tanks, contact water collection ponds, and contact water tanks. And that's just a brief introduction of what the EMWMF is. In terms of status of the facility, we have operated the facility compliantly and safely for the past 10 years plus. The facility has been built out to the maximum capacity that is allowed by that particular site, and that is 2.18 million cubic yards. And that expansion, the last expansion, or Cell 6, was completed in 2011. And the facility is approximately 63% full as of the end of December of last year. And it has enabled the accelerated risk reduction and cost-effective risk reduction across the reservation by supporting the demolition of buildings K33 and K25 and other Recovery Act projects at ORNL and Y12. One thing is that on-site disposal is really key to the cleanup program here in Oak Ridge. It has supported efficient cleanup because essentially it avoids the cost of transporting the waste to these western state disposal facilities, which is very expensive. We have conservatively estimated that we have avoided approximately $500 million from the beginning of the cleanup program to date in off-site disposal cost. Having the facility then optimizes the use of available funding for cleanup because we don't have to use those funds to support the transportation of the waste. It reduces the transportation risk and also carbon emissions that result from that heavy transportation of waste. It allows the EM cleanup program to control our waste disposal activities and the availability of waste disposal, so it allows more flexibility from a project management perspective for the cleanup program. And the monitoring that we have been doing for the past 10 years indicates that the waste is being safely contained in the facility. And what you have here is an example of the successes that the EMWMF has supported in the cleanup program here in Oak Ridge. This is the K25 facility, approximately a mile long prior to demolition. And this is the facility just before demolition was completed in December. and all of that demolition debris went to the EMWMF. So that was, one example of how the on-site circular disposal facility has supported the success of the cleanup program. We essentially evaluate our disposal capacity needs long-term. We look at the life cycle of the cleanup program, and we take all the projects that are planned through that life cycle at the 3 sites, ORNL, Y12, and ETTP, and we sequence and schedule those projects. And then we estimate for each project a waste generation amount per year, and then we sequence that waste generation. And then we add a 25% uncertainty factor to those waste estimates. So what you see here is the result of that waste forecasting process for the future, beginning in FY14 all the way through the current estimated completion date for cleanup program in Oak Ridge, which is 2041. And essentially this is the waste generation forecast on an annual basis, not cumulative, but annually. The blue bars are, so to backtrack a little bit, once we have those estimates of waste generation per year, we evaluate that against the remaining capacity at the EMWMF to predict when we will be needing additional capacity to support the cleanup program in the future. And what you see here is the result of that evaluation, and the blue bars represent the waste that can be accommodated in the existing facility, the EMWMF, and the red bars are the waste that we plan to generate but that cannot fit in the existing facility, the EMWMF. And essentially, as you can see, 2023 is the forecast year, and again, this is a conservative forecast, but FY 2023 is the year when we expect the existing facility to be full, and we need to come up with a solution for how we're going to dispose of the waste after that we generate. And this forecast is based on a $429 million budget assumption. So depending on how much budget you get, there's fluctuations as we update this on an annual basis on what that forecast will be as we get closer to that 2023 date. We'll know with more certainty precisely when that capacity will be needed. This is essentially the same data on a cumulative basis with the 2013 bar representing the waste that has been generated to date, and then for 14 and on, the cumulative waste generation projection. And the main thing that I want you to take away from this is that, as I said, in 2023, when we expect the current facility to be full, for the waste that we expect to generate after that as a result of cleaning up the remaining of the legacies in the Oak Ridge Reservation, we estimate that we need additional capacity equivalent to the size of the existing EMWMF, roughly 2.5 million cubic yards. So essentially, capacity equivalent to the size of the existing facility will be needed to support completion of the cleanup program in Oak Ridge. And that would be, again, beginning in 2023. So where do we go from here? Essentially, we need to plan ahead. That's our job. We need to make sure that we have that capacity when we need it, in whichever form it may be. So we have begun that planning process using the CERCLA process. We are currently in the first step of the CERCLA process, which is the remedial investigation and feasibility study phase. And we have submitted a couple of drafts of the RIFS to the regulators and have received a lot of comments that we're currently addressing. The next step would be to develop a proposed plan, which will mark the beginning of the formal public consultation period, and that would be followed by a record of decision. So before I give you the details of what the results of that process are thus far, I wanted to make sure that I don't leave anyone with the impression that any decisions have been made either regarding whether or not we're going to have a new CERCLA facility and where that facility will be located. We are, again, following the CERCLA process, and in the first step of that process. But we do have some information that have resulted as part of that first step that is giving us some indication of what the possibilities are. And that's what I want to share with you today. So again, the public and stakeholder involvement and consultation will continue through the process until that decision is reached. And we have had, I think this is the fourth presentation that we have with portions of the SSAB. I think the EM committee, or there were 3 presentations to that committee, and this is the first one to the full SSAB. We also had a presentation to the City Council, and we will continue to do this as we move forward and as you desire to share the information that we have. These 2 pictures are some examples of the types of facilities that are slated to be demolished in the future, for which we will need disposal capacity in addition to what we have today. So we basically, as part of the RIFS, are evaluating 3 possible alternatives. The first is the typical no-action alternative. And what that would involve is that we would not have a reservation-wide coordinated disposal strategy, and instead we would be making CERCLA disposal decisions on a project-by-project basis. The second alternative is on-site disposal, which again would involve constructing a new CERCLA disposal facility similar to the one that is already in place, the EMWMF. And lastly, off-site disposal, which again involves transporting the cleanup waste to approved off-site disposal facilities, primarily out west. For example, the Nevada National Security Complex and the Energy Solutions facility in Utah. The preliminary results of that alternative analysis basically say that the no-action alternative is really not an alternative because it doesn't support timely and efficient cleanup, which is what we have to make sure that we do. In terms of the other 2 alternatives, the on-site and off-site disposal alternatives, they both support timely cleanup, and they're both protective of human health and the environment long-term. However, they each have, unique qualities, if you will, or unique features that make one favorable over the other, and I'll get into those a little bit now. For on-site disposal, or the building this new disposal facility that we're using this term to refer to it just to make it easier for us, Environmental Management Disposal Facility, or EMDF. So that would involve a permanent commitment of land for waste disposal and the corresponding environmental impacts from that. It is the lower cost alternative of those 2 alternatives, with an estimated life cycle cost of $817 million, and that's all the way from construction through closure. So it includes construction, operations, and closure. And it requires a record of decision to be completed by FY 2016. The reason for that is there are operational consideration reasons that necessitate the new facility to be operational at least 18 to 24 months before the existing facility is full. So we would need the new facility no later than 2022 to support the projected capacity utilization of the existing facility by 2023. So in terms of off-site disposal, the benefit of off-site disposal is it could potentially more effectively isolate the waste because of the arid climate in the western states and because of the isolated quality of those facilities. However, relying on those facilities again introduces uncertainty and reduces flexibility for the cleanup program in terms of how we plan and execute our work. There are significantly higher risks due to transportation, and the costs are significantly higher, $2.4 billion versus $817 million estimated for the on-site facility. And the key to this is that if we have to go this route, it'll just take longer because our budgets, as you know, are not getting any larger. So it will just take longer to get the cleanup completed, and those risks have have to be carried for a longer time than if we have a facility on site that is much less costly. So when we cited the EMWMF and did that public and stakeholder involvement process, there were a lot of sites that were evaluated, and we've evaluated essentially the same sites this time around because there's still, alternatives, and have basically screened those sites. Some of the reasons for screening those sites are karst features at the sites, the sites not having enough area to accommodate the capacity needs that we're estimating that we will need in an efficient manner. Having a designated land use that is not compatible with waste disposal is mainly unrestricted land use or is reserved for future research activities. And those are really the primary ones, but there are several reasons, again, that were the same rationale that was used to originally screen the sites, and we've preliminary screened the sites. And the East Bear Creek Valley, which is the location of the EMWMF, is emerging as the preferred site for a new facility for the same reasons that it was selected originally over 10 years ago for the EMWMF. And before I get through those reasons, and I'll probably have to have you look at your slide because this is not as clear on the wall here as it is on your slides. Right here is the Y12 site, and this orange line demarcates the East Bear Creek site. So it's immediately west of the Y12 site, right past the main entrance portal to the Y12 plant, which would be somewhere around here. So there's restricted access to that area. This is the location of the existing facility, the EMWMF. This area right here is the Bear Creek Burial Grounds area, which is a former waste disposal area that was closed under RCRA. And this area right here, again, is a former waste disposal area, former sanitary landfill at the bottom that has been covered and closed, oil land farm closed under RCRA, and a former waste disposal facility, the burn yard that some of you may be familiar with. So essentially, one of the main reasons that this area is really desirable is because historically and currently has and is being used as a waste management and waste disposal area. So it's most compatible with the future land use designation, which is controlled industrial land use. Is most favorable for isolation from the public because it's essentially in the backyard of the Y12 site and access is restricted. And as such, vehicular impacts to the local community are minimized. And again, these are the same reasons that that drove the decision to locate the EMWMF in this area. So this is basically where we are in terms of how these remedial investigation feasibility study evaluation has preliminary concluded after evaluating all these sites. This is just a schematic diagram of the new facility, the proposed new facility relative to the existing facility. And basically, one of the key features of this particular setup is that it allows for the entire projected capacity need to be accommodated in that space in terms of a more, instead of having a more inefficient, broken down several facilities in that area or in another area. Another thing that I wanted to highlight here is that this site, just as the existing site, would not be built out immediately. The cells are built on an as-needed basis, so we would start with the first 2 cells when we begin the facility operation, and then based on projections of waste generation, we would plan and implement construction projects to build out to full capacity if necessary, when and if necessary. all these other things I think we've talked about. The other thing is the conceptual design that is being put together as part of the RIFS accommodates hydrology of the site using engineered fixtures to control surface and groundwater. So we are applying the lessons that we learned from the siting of the EMWMF and the necessity to deal with water features in that location to this new location which has similar water features. This is a planning schedule. As I said before, we're in the first step of the CERCLA process toward a record of decision, which is the remedial investigation feasibility study. Our current plan is to complete that process by the end of the first quarter of 2015. Again, that would be followed by a proposed plan that we project to be complete by the end of the third quarter of 15 to support getting a record of decision by the end of the second quarter of 16. And again, this is all to support having the cells constructed by 2022. So in summary, on-site disposal is really key to our program here in Oak Ridge. It has proven to support the efficient, safe, and cost-effective completion of our cleanup activities. We know for sure that we will need additional capacity in order to complete all the cleanup work that we're projecting at the reservation, particularly ORNL and Y12. Many potential locations for new facility are being considered and were considered also for the EMWMF. Again, the preferred location is emerging to be the same location for the existing facility because of the historic and current use of that area as a waste management area. It's a brownfield area, it's adjacent to Y12, and it utilizes or takes advantage of the existing infrastructure at the EMWMF to support the operation of the new facility. Again, the key here, we would need a ROD by 2016 if that was the decision that was made to proceed with that facility, to allow for uninterrupted on-site disposal. And the public and stakeholder involvement and consultation will continue to be a key part of the process. And that's all I had to present.
Thank you, Laura. Very, very, I say, informational and educational. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Bell.
Thank you. How is it determined and who will be responsible for cleaning up a facility, especially like some at X10, maybe the 9200 series at Y12? How clean does it have to be? Who will determine that, and who's going to be responsible for doing that?
In general, the EM program is responsible for cleaning and demolishing and remediating legacies from the Cold War and all the way back to World War II, and that focuses on process-contaminated buildings. There is not a differentiator on how contaminated it needs to be for the EM program to take it, as long as the building is process contaminated. In other words, if a building doesn't have any process contamination but has lead paint and asbestos, that would be the responsibility of the site program, in the case of Y12, NNSA, in the case of ORNL, the Office of Science, to clean up those facilities. If it's process contaminated, it is the responsibility of the EM program. We have, within our long-term life cycle plan, all the cleanup work necessary at Y12 and ORNL to address the legacies of the Cold War and World War II that remain and that involve process-contaminated buildings, soils, sediments, and so on. So it is in our plan, it is in our projections. A lot of the facilities have already been accepted into the EM program. There are a lot of the facilities that are not formally into the program yet, but as we move forward, those transfers will be done when the budgets are there, and it is the EM's program responsibility.
One follow-up, Mr. Bell.
Am I that limited?
Yes, tonight you are, because other people have questions too. Then we'll come back.
But the, these new areas to be filled will have to have some kind of a level of contamination before they can receive that material. Now, who's deciding that, and how will that be implemented, especially as you begin to destroy a facility where the level may change? That may be certainly true at X10. Does that make sense?
I think he's talking about characterization.
Yeah, you're talking about establishing cleanup criteria?
Yeah,
Or waste acceptance criteria?
Well, both.
So,
You
okay,
got to
so,
have
right.
the criteria first and then the
Right.
acceptance criteria
So,
to
so
follow up on
the
that.
cleanup criteria is a tri-party decision made between DOE, EPA, and the state of Tennessee. And those levels that are developed and agreed to by the agencies are documented in the records of decision. And then so that's to determine what needs to be cleaned up, and if it does need to be cleaned up, to what level. And then there's the decision about whether the waste that is generated as a result of the cleanup can be disposed of at the on-site disposal facility that's currently in operation, or if it needs to be shipped off-site elsewhere for disposal. And there are waste acceptance criteria that the landfill has developed, and I must say a very rigorous process that is followed to characterize the waste streams and evaluate them to determine if they meet the criteria that have already been established and agreed to allow disposal in the on-site cell.
But you already have a waste acceptance criteria,
We do for the
Yes.
on-site disposal cell.
and you're assuming that will just continue on into.
No, we're not assuming that. We, as part of the record of decision for a new facility, if that was the decision, we would work with the state and EPA to agree on what the criteria for the new facility will be, applying lessons learned for the existing facility and the waste acceptance criteria that we're using there. So I don't think assuming that it's going to be the same is the right assumption. It may end up being the same. It may not. It depends on the negotiations between the three parties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Ms. Hall?
How many other waste management facilities in the U.S. have the same kind of on-site disposal set up? Is it just the three?
Do you know the answer? I know that there's other sites that do. I know that Hanford has one. I know that Paducah is in the process of getting one. I know there's one in Ohio, but
Right. Basically,
I'm not sure that I know all of them.
almost all of the big DOE installations that are engaged in cleanup have an on-site disposal cell of some type. And as with us, they take the vast majority of the less contaminated material generated by cleanup and store it on site, dispose of it on site. They take the more contaminated slice and ship it somewhere else, for the most part out west. But essentially all of the big sites that have undergone cleanup, one exception to that is the Rocky Flats site, where they actually dug everything up and shipped it somewhere else. But if you look at all the other big sites you're used to hearing about, they have disposal facilities.
The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.